And our first guest that is with us today is Tom Hoshko.
If you want to make a lot of money, get between two people with a shitload of money.
My most influential mentor.
Yeah, I went into Publix four months ago. I played a $5 scratch off and I won $1 million. Now that's luck. Okay.
Well, it's hot, just like this podcast is going to be hot.
Joe Mitchell is.
Who?
Welcome to the Opportunity Accelerators podcast, brought to you by Skillstorm, the leaders in custom-built US-based tech teams.
Welcome to the Opportunity Accelerators podcast. I'm Vince Verga, along with my friends, business partners, and co-hosts, the guys with the two best accents in all of IT services, Justin Vianello and Joe Mitchell.
Thank you, Vince. Thank you, Vince.
What's going on, guys?
It's just another wonderful day in Florida.
Well, it's hot, just like this podcast is going to be hot.
Yeah, when we were wanting to really get the message out and share or have a way of weaving our individual stories into some of the conversations we were having with our guests, we felt it was important to go on a journey with them. We know that the things that shapes people's lives and people's careers are the individual experiences that they have throughout their lives. And so rather than focusing on the technical parts of what they do, and rather than getting to the hardcore technical elements of what we do, we thought it would be more impactful to go on a personal journey with our guests, and through that share their experiences and their successes and how they've been able to achieve the outcomes that they were looking for through what shaped them throughout their career. We also thought that people would be way more interested in that than hearing the three of us talk about technical stuff.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Look, the journey to success has lots of ups and downs, and usually there's a whole bunch of challenges, but you meet some great people along the way who can take you under their wing and provide mentorship, and that certainly happened to me. And as I've met more and more people, I realized that it's happened to them. So to me, it's super exciting to share stories and to help motivate and inspire people. So I'm excited.
Yeah, and if you think about what we do as an organization, right, our purpose is to accelerate opportunity. And, you know, we're training thousands of first-generation professionals and military veterans. And I think, you know, Joe, you just mentioned, you know, I think we've all been very fortunate to have, you know, people that we've worked with that we consider, you know, mentors and set a great example for us. And, you know, the point is we can give them a lot of sort of technical information in our training classes, but there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can only learn through somebody that's been there, right? And done that. So what we decided is for our first few shows, we were going to interview some people that we consider to be mentors. And our first guest that is with us today is Tom Hoshko. So I've known Tom for 20 years. Tom is, and I consider him my most influential mentor. But Tom is a pioneer and a legend in the IT services industry. He's built 4 very successful companies in the industry over the last 40 years, both in the commercial and federal sectors. His first company, CPI, which he sold to AccuStaff in the mid-90s, was their platform company that really helped define the IT services industry. AccuStaff later became known as Modus and the MPS Group, and they were one of the best performing publicly traded companies in the 90s. That legacy is still alive today. Modus was acquired by Adecco, which is now one of the largest companies in the world, $24 billion in revenue with 40,000 employees. And the reality is Tom played an important part in that history. So we're going to talk to Tom about how he started his career, what led him to be an extremely successful founder, entrepreneur, and leader. He's worked in all aspects of the business, from sales to management to operations to M&A, being involved in hundreds of different transactions. He's won numerous awards, including the Ernst & Young's Entrepreneur of the Year Award in 2004. And his companies have made the Inc. 500 list on 6 different occasions and qualified for the Inc. 5000 list another half a dozen times. One of the things I've learned from Tom is to never burn a bridge. We'll talk about that a little bit. But because of that, he's still, anybody in the industry will take his call. He's extremely highly regarded and well respected. And he still consults with companies today, helping them navigate growth and take advantage of opportunities. His career family tree is chock full of successful people that he gave opportunities to, that were able to learn from him. I count myself as one of those individuals. And probably one of the things I admire most about Tom is how genuinely happy he is for all of those people and the success that they've had. So most importantly, I'd say Tom is an outstanding father and husband and grandfather now. So we're going to talk a little bit about his sons as well, who are successful entrepreneurs in their own right. I'm certainly proud to count him as a friend and grateful how he's inspired me for all that I've learned from him over the years. So Tom, we're excited to have you on the show. Did I leave anything out in your intro?
Welcome,
No,
Tom.
thank you. Very well done.
Hey,
Could have done better myself.
That
Appreciate
I've never
the
heard.
compliments.
I've never heard Vince say so many nice things about someone in one paragraph.
Yeah.
Makes me want to go back to work again.
Well, you never know after this.
That's for sure.
So Tom, we kind of want to take it from the beginning. You know, our audience is young people starting their careers, and you know, a lot of them are, like we said, coming from the military, and they're, you know, first generation professionals. So, you know, coming from humble beginnings, which I understand is part of your story. So tell us what it was like for you growing up in Cleveland, Ohio. Is that right?
That's right. And you know, everybody needs a spark and a mentor in their career. So early on in high school, I was decent in academics, decent in sports, and that's where I met my wife. So what really sparked me though was I had a relative that came over. He came over as an immigrant with my grandmother and my mom from Czechoslovakia. His name was Mr. Steve Roman. He landed in Halifax with them and went on to Toronto. Outside of Toronto, there was a place called Unionville. He bought 600 acres and did what they did best, farming and all that. And he bought some additional property. Turned out to be the largest uranium mine in the world. So needless to say, he was the second richest person in Canada at the time. And but he didn't stop there. And so at my age, when you're in high school, you don't know what you want to do. And I certainly wasn't ready. Even when I graduated, I was thinking seriously about college, but you know, I knew I'd be the guy going to the fraternity and partying, and I really didn't know what I really wanted to do. But after seeing him, and you know, we actually honeymooned. He put us on his Gulfstream. He had a place in Lifer Key. We stayed there. When we were going there, Nixon was actually leaving with the Secret Service. So that's the kind of people that, you know, at that level they hung around with. And to me, that was a whole different world, you know, because my parents certainly weren't millionaires, but they were hardworking people. Came over and they were happy. You know, had a great upbringing. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I got out of high school. So what I did, one thing I knew I didn't want to do was the last year they drafted was 71. I didn't want to go in the Army. And
so for our younger listeners, that would be the Vietnam War.
Yep, that's for sure. That was the last year. I joined the Navy, and boy, did I luck out, because after basic training, they sent me to Pensacola, and I took cryptography. It wasn't crypto like today, but cryptography, which is encrypting and decrypting, you know, message traffic. And it was actually, we were the predecessor to the internet, because they had a very similar system that's what sparked, you know, the internet revolution. But so going back to the Pentagon and how that all led up to that. So they put me through school. I was in Pensacola, got my security clearance. At this time, I'm only 17 years old. So, you know, my parents actually had a sign for me to go into the Navy. And most of my friends were getting stationed on ships. My first station that I went to was Morocco. And so here I am, 18 years old, wearing plain clothes. We lived close to Rabat, which was like the embassy, but I lived on the beach, Medina Beach. And some of the best times of my life. And my first assignment was in City Aia, which was kind of a secret base nobody knows about.
So you're 17, 18 years old.
Yep.
You find yourself in Morocco. I mean,
yeah.
What is this like? Not too many people have had an experience like that.
Well, a lot of people ask me, what was the happiest time of your life, or what would you invest in? So the answers are a lot simpler than you would think. But when you're going through these things, you don't realize that, you know, that could have been one of the happiest times of my life. But at the time, you don't know it. So we're living on the beach. I always lived. I was fortunate enough, wherever I was stationed, I was always on the water, so I was always happy being on the beach. We wore plain clothes. My one roommate had a Honda 750, and the rest of us pitched in, got a VW bus that we used to push down the hill so it would start every morning so we can get to work, because battery was always dead. But boy, did we have fun. I mean, hanging out. And most people didn't know what we did, and they really didn't care. But there was a lot of surfers there, and a lot of people just traveled, you know, back in those days. And they always wondered what we did, because we'd have rooftop parties, and they got pretty feisty. It was a lot of fun. A lot of French people go there. It's like that's where they go for their vacations.
Pretty good way to serve your country.
Yeah, it was good, but I learned a lot.
Hey, Tom, can I ask a question? So, in terms of, obviously you enlisted in the Navy at 17, right? In terms of you growing up, and as you look back now, how much of an impact did that have on your development and your maturity? And do you believe that going through that experience accelerated your career, helped you mature? And if you, and I know I'm asking a lot of questions here, and if you had the ability to do it again, would you go that path or would you go another path?
All great questions, and absolutely, 100%. I was only 23 years old, and I was already a second-class petty officer. So for my age, I was probably the youngest one at that point. But I knew I wanted to. It wasn't going to be my career, and I knew I wanted to do more in that industry. But I thought that the place to do that, working with defense contractors, being close to the power, was going to be DC. So they were actually going to send me, my wife comes over, I had 1 year to go, they were going to put me on a ship. I said, this is not going to happen. So what I did was I took a bonus, they gave me a bonus, and I extended for 2 more years. So I had to do 3 years, and they sent me to DC, and I worked in the Pentagon. Best thing that ever happened to me, because they put me through American University. I got my MIS in telecommunications. I was already doing in telecommunications. Yeah. So I'd actually bring kids from college to the Pentagon, uncleared parts, then just to show them, what we were doing and how we were doing it.
So then tell us, so you're at the Pentagon, you've got all this experience doing this, intelligence work for the government. At what point, do you decide to leave and start your career in industry? How did that happen?
Right. So the last year I was there, I actually started working part-time for a company in McLean, Virginia. It was Cybermetrics. And what they were doing was placing people. And I found out I had a knack for recruiting. And we didn't have LinkedIn and everything back then, but I knew how to find people.
Were you more or less in a sales role then?
When I was doing recruiting, I was working at the Pentagon, so I was just sending them candidates and they were getting placed. Got it. I was making more money on the side than I was making. I don't know how I did it. I was going to school. I was working for Cybermetrics. I'm at the Pentagon, and that's when my first son was born. So to this day, I don't know how the hell we did that, but we'd meet each other. My wife was working, so we'd meet each other she was working in the Springfield Mall, and we'd meet and switch. The kids I'd take him one way and she'd go the other way, and almost on a daily basis. So, but you know what? We didn't know any different. We had fun. We worked hard. We played hard. We had great friends where we lived, and so
you've talked a lot. Sorry, Tom. You've talked a lot about that. You've talked about relationships. When a lot of people will talk about networks.
Yep.
So you were building your own network before the likes of LinkedIn was there and all of that. How important was that to you during your career in the military and in the Pentagon?
Well, extremely important. And I've told Vince many times, I never burned a bridge. And that's what allowed me when I got out of the Pentagon, I went to go work for a lot of competitors. And when I figured out that I've learned all I can learn and I can't go any further, the first company I with when I got out of the Navy, and I was in DC, which was fortunate because that's where, a great place to start your career, especially if I want to be working with defense contractors, and I had my security clearance. So the first one was Technical Aid Corporation, and they were an engineering firm. They brought me in, and I was starting to work first in the DC office, but immediately, they wanted me to open up a branch, and they said, you're from Cleveland, Ohio. Well, let's go open an office in Ohio. And then from that, we took off. Whenever I opened it for the competition, that branch became one of the biggest in a short period of time. And then they said, go do another one, go do another one. So I was with them for a few years and probably opened up 13 offices. First it started with the region. I did Detroit, and then I did Chicago. And then it went, as far as California and Sunnyvale. And so I learned a lot from them. And one thing I did learn, it was an Italian family, great family. And being cocky and young at the time, I started a little business on the side. Back, as I told you, I was doing permanent placements. But they wanted to do all contract. It's a company called EDB Thompson Technical Aid Corporation. I got a call, and I had to go up to Boston, and they're all there
to meet with the owners, right?
Yeah, the owners and some people I didn't know, and my boss, who's like a great guy. He's I learned a lot from him, but great sales guy. So. What happens next is they go, you have like a business. They have my bank account records, and you're like placing people on the side that competes with what we do. I go, no, I asked you guys, you want to get in that business? You said no. So I decided to go and start doing that in addition to consulting and contract programming and all that. do the placement. So they then looked at me and they said, straight face, anything you do for me. So you take it from there. It's an Italian family, and that's
didn't you facetiously ask them if you were to open a ice cream stand? What was their response to that?
my ice cream stand. Then I knew I stopped joking, and then I got very quiet. And I says, can I go call my wife? And then called my attorney, which was my real estate attorney. He's like, man, he says, I'll tell you what to do. He says, but I would never take this. And, probably you'd win in court, but, you're young, you got a family. And, things happen in your life for a reason. I mean, if that didn't happen, I might still have stayed there until I'd been working. You can make good money working for other people, but you can't make, the great money until you start your own company and build it. But even then, you don't make it until you sell. I mean, you work 10 years to go build a company, but you got to pick the right time for the exit strategy. It's got to be the right market, and you got to have the right product or services with the right customers. I mean, it's not luck; it's hard work. Luck is if you go win the lottery.
Which you've done that as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I went into Publix four months ago. I played a $5 scratch off, and I won $1 million. Now that's luck. Okay, that wasn't skill. I'm like, I don't know. It just happens. So, but you make your own luck.
Charmed life, Tom. Charmed life.
Yeah, you make your own luck. So, needless to say, what he advised me, he looked at every place they had offices. And he says, forget whether you got a non-compete or not, or what's going to happen. You need to find out, I would take your family, move, and go to a state where they don't have an office, and then start your own company. So he said, interesting enough, he said, they're not in Florida. And that's how I ended up in Fort Lauderdale. So the 90s then became, after I grew my company, started in the 80s, CPI, and by the time I sold CPI in 95, the business was on fire. And that's just before .com, 95 to 98.
So let's rewind there a little bit. So there was a family that you used to work for that necessitated you move somewhere else. So you end up in Florida.
Right. Yep.
And eventually you start your own company called CPI.
Correct.
So talk to us about that. How did you make that decision? And was it a tough decision? And what was it like early on? No,
I just knew that I wanted to, I learned all I can from these people. And, God bless all of them. I learned a lot from them, even from, technical aid. They were an engineering job shop, and they wanted to get in IT. So they had a vision, and they hired the talent. And one thing I learned, every town I went to, if you hire the best talent, you're going to control the market. You control the talent, control the market. So I had $25,000, took that out of my Merrill Lynch retirement account, and started out of my house down here. And that's how I got into CPI.
How old were your boys at the time?
St. Coleman. So they were grade schools, maybe, getting ready to go to high school.
So you take every penny you have, right? You've got two young boys in grade school.
Correct.
And you start your own company, and you started out of the house?
Started out of the house. Couldn't afford an office or anything like that. I remember my wife used to take the FedEx packages to the bank, every week. And so fortunately for me, I think it was at the time as North Carolina National Bank. I had a small bank, went with them, they got a line of credit. And the North Carolina National Bank became Nations Bank, and now, they're Bank America. So I did have great customers, mostly Fortune 500 companies.
Sorry, Tom, I was just going to say, so just backing up, obviously you've started your own company, you've thrown your entire life investment into that company.
Right.
And you, with the vision of if you can control the talent, you can control the market, right? But along that way, you were obviously learning a lot in the Pentagon, you were learning a lot when you worked in these other organizations. What are some of the most impactful things, whether they're tactical or not, that you learned that helped you grow the business initially to where you wanted to get it to?
Well, every company did, and still to this day, every company, even all the acquisitions I did it for a reason. They did something well or better than us. But to this day, there's still not every company doing everything well. And people often ask me, they said, when you start at home, when I look back now, the money I made, they go, what would you invest in? The answer is invest in yourself. Why are you going to go invest in some other company or make some other guy rich? And those people went on to be millionaires. And then when I saw that and what the potential was, what I have to lose at this point? And it was a lot of hard work, and there were some tough times, and but once we got rolling, and then you build your relationships with your customers. I have had the same customers through my whole career. When I sold to Modus, to AccuStaff, I bought a couple boutique hotels, and we were and made money off that, made another million. And people, oh, you only made $1 million? And I go, you think it's that easy making $1 million? I said, you people, and it's not like the market we had.
It's not like buying a lottery ticket.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That wasn't luck. That was a lot of work, and I learned a lot. I learned I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
But I was
so Tom, so you're basically a one-man shop out of your house.
Yeah.
At what point did you realize you needed to scale it and bring on people to help you, and how did that happen?
Once I had things done, then we went ahead and got the office. Then I started building a company, and I had good cash flow. Once I had the cash flow and line of credit, then you go get the CFO, you build your back office, and my two, even down the road, my two sons worked for me, and Dave's in sales, and Thomas Paul was in back office.
Mm-hmm.
But I always told them that you're going to start your own company, and so once you learn everything you can, everything I can teach you or anybody else, but whatever you do, it's what they're doing is very similar to what I do, but it's not exactly. I said you got to have not just the passion, you got to enjoy what you do to be good at it. There's no way in hell I would work for a company or for an industry that I just didn't believe in or have passion about. I mean, then it just makes everything so much easier.
So let's back up a little bit, just so now you're scaling, and then at some point, because of a client relationship, you ended up relocating the family and the business to North Carolina, right?
And that's when it changed. So I got a call, from back then it was Nations Bank, or maybe even NCMB and then Nations Bank, but now it's, as we all know, Bank America in Charlotte. So that's why I says I always moved for an opportunity. I didn't hesitate. They says, we want to give you more business, but we want you to relocate to Charlotte. And I says, well, how much business are you talking about? And he said he'd give me 100 positions. He said, whether you fill them or not, that's up to you. But we're going to give you 100 positions out of the gate. And we probably filled 90% of them, before the competition. Competition back in those days wasn't very aggressive. So when you come in and take them by surprise, it turns around, if you're really, balls against the wall, they can't keep up with you. And they're like, who is this guy? Where'd he come from? And that's when you're getting all the accolades. And so Charlotte, and we were there for 10 years. So it took me 10 years to build that company before we were getting offers from other companies. But when you're on Entrepreneurial and Inc. 500, you're noticed by everybody. And even
when was the first year you were on the Inc. 500?
Well, it was like a few years in a row. So it's just before we sold. So I sold in 95. So it'd be early 90s. And it was every year getting bigger and bigger.
Did it feel in any ways, surreal to you? Because then you won Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year around that same time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I even went to nationals, but I got beat out by Hooters. Hooters was on the table next to me. They won the national award.
If you're going to lose to a company, Hooters is a good one to lose to.
It was a good table to be next to as well.
who had more fun, you or the Hooters guys?
I actually ended up sitting at their table. So that went over real big, but it was fun.
So what I wanted to ask you is, so you're experiencing all this success relatively early on, right? 5, 6, 7 years into the company. Mm-hmm. Now you've got a company, a large publicly traded company that's looking to buy you. You would be essentially the platform company for IT services. During this period of time, did you ever stop and reflect and just how crazy that is? Like, did you ever, did you realize it at the time, or were you just so busy, with everything that was happening?
Absolutely not. Because I just thought that's, what everybody does, and hey, we got an opportunity, let's go build this. We were so busy, we worked hard and played hard, but we never had time to even look back or think that we just had this competitiveness and just to be better, and get bigger and scale. And not all people do. Like, my son just called me right now. He said, I'm at the point right now, I'm doing really well. I'm going to have to start hiring people and maybe expand. And it's not an easy decision. It was never, it was an easy decision for me. I never looked back. I just,
pedal to the metal.
Right. But like I said, if you need to be in the right market with the right services at the right time, when Derek came along with AccuStaff, I said, this is a golden opportunity.
What would you look for when you hire somebody? What are some of the things that would stand out to you and make you think that was going to be a good?
When some people tell me they want security and they wanted the salary, they want all this, and then I had a different, pitch. I said, well, what about this? What if I, the higher level executives. I said, if you got your own branch, you got your own P&L, I'll pay you less, give you a little equity, but then I'll give you a bonus based on if you beat your numbers. And it's the same thing I've done. I did it when I spent a year at
Technosource,
Technosource.
That's where we met.
For a year, right. And I did that with you guys. And then the company grew because I put everybody on incentive. And but then it's just to keep the people too, because these people could have gone off and started their own company, just like I did. And at some point, most of them did. And I think 5 people became millionaires just off CPI.
Tom, I've got a question. So, and I think it's sort of relatable to the people who are on this pod as well. So it's pretty clear from fairly early on in your career, you could have taken the safe route, right? You mentioned that even within the Navy, your career progressed well. You then moved to the Pentagon. So you really didn't have to take risk, especially for someone who's married, got a young family, everything you were talking about. But you did. And you made substantial personal sacrifices to do that, and you took on that risk. Where do you think that entrepreneurial drive came from? And is there a moment that you reflect on in your past when you were a kid, whenever it might be, where you said, wait a minute, this is something I aspire to achieve one day? I'd love to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, the first spark was obviously Mr. Roman. And when I saw that kind of lifestyle, I didn't even know people lived like that. And that was definitely, that got me. But then along the way, there's been a few, even like Derek Dewan. He was a financial guy. I was the guy go out, bring the business, deliver. He supported me any way he can. He gave me stock options, and he understood me, and he understood my people too. And we always took care of it. And he was better in the back office and finance. And then I started realizing how important that was as I moved along. Before, it was just pedal to the metal. Now it's not what you make, it's what you keep.
So I wanted to ask one more question specifically to your Navy career. So you obviously chose to go into the Navy early at the age of 17. So we are starting to see in the industry, and there's been a lot of noise about this, that clients and even the government, both state and federal, are looking at dropping the degree requirements. In terms of the impact that had on your career, entering the Navy early in terms of your development and maturity, and as we think of other young people who are trying to figure out what they're going to do, how impactful was going into the Navy first on your development? And the second part of that is, for people who are not sure what to do, having the option of going into the military rather than going into university, getting those skills, and then being able to find a job in the market with some of these top employers. How impactful do you think that is going to be, more generally, on the market and individuals' lives?
I think very. And a lot of in colleges, it's a lot of research, but in the military, out of necessity, it's a lot of development. And that's where things are happening. Obviously, to stay ahead of our adversaries, it's not just IT. It could be a number of things. But so I learned a lot, and they give you a lot of responsibility. I just even I went back, and I was never on a ship, so I knew an admiral. He took me for a ride on the carrier, went out for a few days. And the responsibility they give these kids, when I was 17, 18 years old, is amazing. And so, but a lot of kids now there's no consequences if they screw up, or if they're, you're going to be a knucklehead, which I was back then. But I knew in the Navy, if I screwed up, there's going to be consequences, and, my career is going to go down the tubes, and, a lot more with it. So, and I don't say it much in working with a public company anymore, but I played the game. And you don't go to Wall Street, you don't tell them, Tom, you're doing great, what's your secret? Oh, I'm just playing the game. No, you don't want to say that on Wall Street, but, that in the military where I started, I did what it took.
So Tom, you had mentioned, Steve Roman, your uncle. That was kind of an inspiration to you. He was a very successful, self-made man. And we talked about how, you were at Modus, and then huge success story there on Wall Street. You decided to leave Modus, and then you came to Technosource, where I was working. You became our president. You were actually the first guy I ever met that was a self-made man that was wildly successful. And I'll never forget the day you invited me to lunch, and we went down to the parking lot, and you had me get in your blue Dodge Viper with a white stripe down the middle of it, and you went screaming down Cypress Creek Road, squealing your tires on the way to lunch. I'm like, who is this guy?
Well, that's what motivated me. Being in Florida, I also had a cigarette boat back then, but I always liked cars, fast boats. You know, that was just, yeah. But just to back up 1 second, because you guys were asking about, you know, the mentor and all that kind of stuff. At that point, you know, after I did Modus and you're on, you know, you're king of the world, you think you are the mentor. But what motivated me was watching guys like you and other people that were, you know, Karen, I hired her out of college and put her in RTP, but I said, go start your own office in Richmond. I mean, and she's like, are you kidding me? I go, no, you got what it takes. And she's gone on to make probably more money than you and I don't know. She's done very well after we sold. And that was with CPI. So what
and
my
you're still really good friends with Karen, right?
I'm good friends with everybody. So that's what drives me, watching other people be successful. I mean, at some point, you know, and even your own kids, you know, I'm just proud of them, what they're doing. And we could talk a little about what they're doing.
A lot of parents would, you know, love to be in a position of their kids are older now, they're successful in their own right. You know, what advice would you give? Like, what lessons do you think you instilled in them to, you know, help them be successful and, you know, be productive, contributing members of society?
Right. Well, you met my grandson, they grow up very quick. And so I've got, Thomas Paul has 2 girls. They're still in high school. And then David has got a daughter in high school and one that just graduated, which is Manny. And he had all his buddies down at my place in the Bahamas for spring break. We had a really good time. And they ask a lot of questions, but you can't be too serious with them, or they'll fall asleep and get bored with it. So one time they're like, I give them different answers, different day. You know, I said, it all depends on the circumstances. You know, what are you passionate about? What do you want to do? I mean, you all want to make money, but you know, how are you going to get there? What's your goal? What's your, you know, what inspires you? And I said, if you want just a simple answer, and then you guys can go out and party or, you know, whatever you want to do. If you want to make a lot of money, get between 2 people with a shitload of money. And that's what M&A is. I mean, I made more money on deals. Sometimes I wonder, why did I work my ass off so hard my whole life when I could have just been doing deals?
I think, Tom, that brings up something my dad's always said to me, which is it's not what you know necessarily, it's who you know.
Big time.
And you've talked a lot about, you know, all of the people that you've met throughout your entire career and the fact that you don't burn any bridges with anyone. They can trust you. Not only can they trust you, they can have a good time with you. And they're 2 really important things when it comes to building, you know, strong business relationships.
But then you got to deliver, you know, so I could sell and I can close, but then I'm thinking like, oh man, I got to get back to work. You know, a couple of just off the cuff stories. So, I mean, in DC, all we did was IT, and we did all disciplines. We could find the IT talent. If it was out there, we would find it, even if we had to relocate it. But I was with this one guy. Oh, by the way, I've got a requirement. Can you do anything with, do you have any epidemiologists? I didn't even know at that point what I meant. I'm in my 20s, you know. I'm like, you know what? I says, and I don't lie. I says, we never failed at one of those because I never did one. And damn, if I didn't find that person ended up being there for like 10 years. And he says, I know you were full of it, but damn, you delivered. He said, I was giving you a test and you came through. But yeah, I mean, if I didn't, I would have said, you know. But
so when we, in the vein of faking it till you make it, when we first started Skillstorm, you know, Haney was working out of his bedroom and I'm working out of the built-in office in the garage. And the first like real legitimate government contract we got was we were a sub to SAIC, and I was working with a guy named Pete Renfrey, you know, West Point graduate, you know, senior VP, and I'm negotiating with them. Like that contract literally doubled the size of the company. I think we had 15 people on billing, and then now this was another 15 people, all came in one fell swoop. But the reality is I was, because my brother and I were working together in this garage office, and we were in such close quarters all the time, we would just drive each other bananas. So I would go out and make calls leaning over the table saw in the other part of the garage. So that's where I closed the deal with Pete. And we're still friends to this day. Actually, you know, got to share that story with him and his family. But yeah,
you know, the great inspiration. Look at the entrepreneurs. Look at Steve Jobs and look at the Apple starting out of their garage, or it's just amazing.
Yeah. One of the things, Tom, that that I think I learned from you, and I also learned from my father. My parents owned flower shops growing up, and there's people that work there for 10, 15, some of them 20 years, and I mean they weren't making a lot of money. They're working in a flower shop, right? And
Yeah.
and I realized why he had such loyalty was because, number one, he set the example. He was the hardest working person there, and that's something that I always recognize from you. You seem to have a motor that never stops, and that's inspiring. But in addition to that, he was authentic. He was himself, and people responded to that. And I learned that from you as well, and sometimes better at it than others, but I think to see the way people reacted to you guys and respected you, was a great lesson to learn.
Yeah, and so I'm driven by seeing other people succeed. And every company I sold, at least 5, 6 people became millionaires, but then what they did with it, that's even more inspiring to me. I mean, some of these people have surpassed us. I mean, good for you. Some people just have it. You can just know when all you got to do is empower them, and I don't care how old they are. It could be right out of college, good, rarely out of high school, but they got to be smart enough to work for somebody that can teach them all they can before they go do your own thing.
Well, that's
make your own
that's a
mistake.
big part of this podcast. Hopefully they're learning something right now.
Yeah. And so find out what you're good at. If you enjoy it, you got a passion, and then but to really make it, what would you invest in? Invest in yourself.
So Tom, you've obviously been a successful entrepreneur. You've started many businesses and led many businesses. As a leader, if you reflect on yourself, what are the things that you focused on as a leader to try and be the best leader you could be? What are some of the traits that you try to embrace and represent that you believe would encourage and motivate and push your team forward?
Right.
What were the things that if you were giving advice to someone and you were reflecting specifically on your career, what are the things that you try to do to be the best leader you could be?
Well, besides the things motivating them, I try and lead by example. And so the things that got me there was, building the relationships, being a deal maker, being a friend maker, and being a closer. Because a lot of people too can sell the business, but they never ask for the business, and they just can't close. That's, I think, a trait that I try and inspire of them, and to do it in person. You're not going to do it over the phone. You're not going to do it certainly through an email or a text. You got to meet the person. If I'm just inspired by, and also teaching people that to aren't really any shortcuts. It's hard work. It's not luck. You're not going to become a millionaire just because you want to be. You're going to have to learn and start at the bottom and work your way up through the ranks. But you should. If you're going to run a company, you better know everybody else's job better than them. And then, when it was showtime, I mean, if we had a requirement for 50 people, it was Friday afternoon, I said, I'm jumping in recruiting, and we're going to sit here until we fill these requirements. And guess what? So we fill them over the weekend on a Saturday. Competition comes in on Monday, and like, oh, sorry, we already got all the people we need. But people don't have that urgency. And I knew urgency because, if I knew about it, the competition knows about it. So how are we gonna beat them with their own game?
So, I feel like there's always this thing where the current generation kind of or I should say the past generation looks at the current generation and says, oh, it's different now. Maybe they don't have the same work ethic. Things have changed. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think there's some truth to that? Or do you think that, it's all sort of relative in any generation, you've got people that are driven and they can be successful. It's just a question of sort of pointing them in that direction.
I had like about 7 or 8 spring breakers, and I thought that, just graduate from high school. But these guys actually,
your son's friends.
Yeah. And they asked some questions, and they're serious. I mean, now they realize, okay, I'm leaving home. I'm on my own. What they're struggling with is what's their passion and what they need a path. Actually, my kid said, Dad, you did a great job, and the timing was great, and you were in the right place at the right time. But you wouldn't last very long today if you wanted to go start a company, because you'd be in HR and legal. And I'm like, no, I wouldn't. Don't worry. Trust me. I'll take that.
Yeah. You'd adapt. But
they got to be careful to what they say and what they do. And we never had that growing up. We told them whatever we felt, you know?
Yeah, there weren't camera phones around every corner, right?
Oh my
The
gosh.
microphones.
Yeah.
But I think, looking back, what's interesting is you didn't go to college, and, fast forward a couple of decades, maybe 3 decades now, you're looking on and everybody's talking about skills-based hiring, right? And everyone's questioning the value of a college degree. So I'm just interested in your perspective when you think about, young talent coming into the market. Are you more concerned that they have a piece of paper with a credential that says they've been to university? Or are you more concerned with skills that they may have gained through various jobs that they may have had in the past couple of years that could benefit your organization more? What is it that you're looking for, and what advice would you give to people who are contemplating whether to go out and start their own business or to forge their own career path, or whether to go to college and spend the next 4 years at university getting a degree?
Yeah, the people that work for me, I'm actually more interested in their experience and their skill sets and all that. Although I do have customers that you got to have the degree, you got to check all the boxes and all that type of thing. It's an interesting question, and that's why I said that I think it's a little more difficult for them today. I mean, I've got even my own grandson. He's thinking about it. He's going to be starting at a business college down here, but he's like, maybe I should do what you do because I'm just not ready. He says, I don't feel like I go right back to school, and a lot of them are going through that, and it's a difficult choice. So I think the best thing people like us can do that have been there is just tell them how we did it and explain our experiences. And, you got to learn from that. Other than that, there's not much more. Like, then it's on them, and you got to just do it. They talk about things that they'd like to do, but most people never do it. I go, how do you know? What do you got to lose? You're already at the bottom. You're not going to go any lower. So, go for it.
Amazing story. Well, now, thank you, Tom, very much.
Yep.
And one thing I did really want to highlight, and I mentioned it earlier, but I think of all the things that I admire about you, is all the people that you've worked with over the years that have gone on to do great things. And, we obviously, when we get together, you talk about them, and Tom just gushes. Like, he is beyond, proud and excited for them. And to me, that's an abundance mentality. You have that in spades, and I really appreciate, respect that about you. And I appreciate you, being a mentor for me over the years. So thank you.
And likewise, I mean, it's that. So, like, I'm probably not going to start another company, but I wouldn't leave it out either. One more time, maybe wants one more bite of the apple. But what you do inspires me. And, so now the satisfaction is not the employees, it's like the people. These kids need some direction and need a mentor.
Tom, we're going to move on to the next portion of our podcast. I'm going to throw it to Justin Vianello, and he's going to describe the lightning round to you.
Here we go.
Good.
First question: Morocco or Spain?
Morocco.
Marlin or sailfish?
What was the first word?
Marlin or sailfish?
Sailfish.
Camel or kangaroo?
What was the first one?
Camel or kangaroo?
Kangaroo.
Texting or talking?
Talking.
Favorite day of the week?
Wednesday.
We might have to come
Wednesday.
back to that. Favorite city in the US besides favorite city in the US besides the one you live in?
Monte Carlo. Oh, in the U.S.?
Oh, in the US.
San Diego.
Nickname your parents used to call you?
Tommy.
Would you rather be able to speak every language in the world or be able to talk to animals?
Speak every language.
Tom is an animal.
Favorite holiday?
Christmas.
How long does it take you to get ready?
5 minutes.
On a scale of 1 to 10, do you consider yourself a good driver?
10.
Fill in the blank. Joe Mitchell is.
Who?
I think that's where we should end it.
Joe, thank you for your contribution today, Joe. Clearly, it's been valued bold again. Sort of podcast.
He's only saying that because I beat him at dice at Vince's house.
Question.
John Mitchell. Okay, we'll come back. Invisibility or super strength?
Super strength.
Oh, favorite branch of government?
Join the forces, special forces.
Trying to figure the one.
The Navy.
And last one, best boss.
What is that?
Best boss.
Best boss? Derek DeWan. He was the guy that started, that I sold to at Modus.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah, he could tell me things I didn't know.
All right, there we go. That's the end of the lightning round.
Nice. I want to thank you too, because you've been obviously an inspiration to me. You didn't even know it, but it's so easy when you've got people that you just point in the right direction and they just, go for it. It enables you, frees you up to keep doing more and more, and that's how you grow. If you don't have the right people, I couldn't have done this by myself.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
couldn't agree more.
It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time. We got plugs in for Maritime Global, and what's Tom's company again?
Yeah, and Tom's is FSO Pros.
FSO Pros.
Yeah.
Check them out.
Yeah.
Thanks again, everybody. We'll see you next time.
This episode of Opportunity Accelerators has been brought to you by Skillstorm, where our purpose as an organization is to launch and accelerate tech careers. Please be sure to like and subscribe to catch the next episode.